As Israel commits new atrocities every day, the most recent, the double tap strike on the hospital, starvation, murder, annexation, ethnic cleansing, their claims to humanitarianism are hanging on by a thread. Israel's self-image has long been of a liberal democracy in the shape of the West, but the horrors of the genocide mean that people are seeing through the West's sham commitment to humanitarianism, and that puts Western leaders in a bind. The global Palestine movement is only adding to that pressure. So we saw recently, a while back, French President Macron announced in July that France would formally recognise a Palestinian state. This was followed by Canada and the UK announcing plans to recognise Palestine in the September General Assembly of the UN. And most recently, Australia has followed suit. And the move doesn't stem from any moral awakening. Rather, Western leaders are grappling with a crisis of legitimacy. Chris Hedges from the US, who's speaking at the meeting here on October 21st, put it well when he said, "European leaders, along with Joe Biden and Donald Trump, remind us of the real lessons of the Holocaust. It's not never again, but we do not care. They are full partners in the genocide. Some wring their hands and say they're appalled or saddened. Some decry Israel's orchestrated starvation. A few say they will declare a Palestinian state. This is kabuki theatre. A way, when the genocide is over, for the Western leaders to insist they stood on the right side of history, even as they armed, funded the genocidal killers while harassing, silencing or criminalising those who decried the slaughter." Recognising a Palestinian state alongside Israel is ultimately a sham solution. Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong inadvertently acknowledged this when she said, "Everybody understands there's a real risk there'll be no Palestine left to recognise." Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says his announcement is designed to strengthen and push this for a two-state solution, claiming this is the best hope to break the cycle of violence in the Middle East. And he went on to say, "My entire political life I've said I support two states, the right of Israel to exist within secure borders and the right of Palestinians to have their legitimate aspirations for their own state realised. That's my objective." And if you note, I think it's the first part of that he wants to stress, Israel's right to exist as a racist state, while Palestinians simply get their aspirations recognised. The US and Western allies also find it helpful to claim they want two states to give the illusion of planning a fair settlement. And for decades, Western leaders have presented this as the way to deliver peace, but it has always been a fraud. The promise of a Palestinian state has been used to demand concession after concession from Palestinians, while Israel has continued to entrench its dispossession, and it continues to be true. So Anthony Albanese says that the Palestinian Authority has agreed to new conditions demanded by Western states, including demilitarising, so any state would have no army. Israel, however, is not expected to disarm. Albanese also says that Hamas can't be part of it. He hopes it's part of an effort to isolate Hamas, disarm it and drive it out of the region once and for all. In fact, it's so hedged with conditions, the recognition is to preclude any actual state. And it's also because they prefer to see control of the Palestinian territories in the hands of the Palestinian Authority, or PA, which collaborates with Israel to repress any resistance in the West Bank. And as a result, the Palestinian Authority has little credibility left amongst Palestinians. Just 19% of Palestinians in the West Bank approve of the PA, according to a May poll. Hamas remains more popular. And I think we've just seen the recent expulsion of the Iranian ambassador. Despite the fact that they won't expel the Israeli ambassador, despite the fact that the crimes are much bigger and much easier to prove, I think is an indication that nothing has really changed. And it's not just the recent genocide which is an obstacle to two states. Historically, two states have been a promise dangled in front of Palestinians, like a carrot forever out of reach, as an attempt to suppress their resistance. It's been on the table for several decades, but absolutely nothing has come of it. Between 1993, when Israel and Palestinian leaders signed the Oslo Accords, and today, over 600,000 more Israeli settlers have poured into the West Bank and East Jerusalem. and Israel will never allow them to be removed. So I want to go over briefly the Oslo Accords. The first Palestinian Intifada took place from 1987 to 1993. The first Oslo Accord was signed in 1993. And plans for a two-state solution emerged from the Oslo peace process between the then leading resistance group, the Palestinian Liberation Organisation, the PLO, and Israel. Many Palestinians hoped that after years of struggle and sacrifice, that this could be a step towards real progress. But as Palestinian academic Edward Said said at the time, the Accords were an instrument of Palestinian surrender. The only reason that Israel began negotiations was because of the first Intifada in 1987, and because the following year the PLO made the major concession of recognising the state of Israel and its right to exist. The first Intifada erupted after decades of occupation and oppression. The rebellion lasted nearly 5 years and inspired similar results across the Middle East. Palestinians revolted against the misery of occupation, taking Israel, the US and the PLO itself by surprise. Palestinian youth threw stones against armoured cars, hundreds of thousands mobilised in the streets in the occupied territories. And Palestinians inside Israel, that the Israelis call the Arab Israelis, itself joined a general strike in solidarity with striking workers in the occupied territories. And the scenes of oppressed Palestinians rising up against their oppressors started to break Israel's carefully cultivated image of being a plucky David facing an Arab Goliath. But the PLO betrayed Palestinians' hope for liberation by endlessly compromising with Israel. So when the PLO recognised the Israeli state in 1988, it abandoned the goal of liberating the whole of Palestine. This meant giving up 80% of Palestinian land occupied by Israel since 1948, in return of hoping for a Palestinian mini-state alongside it based in the West Bank and Gaza that been occupied by Israel since 1967. But the Oslo Accords left a fundamental question unanswered, which was when would Israel withdraw from Gaza and the West Bank? When would a Palestinian state be formed? The Accords were actually only declarations of principles for future negotiations. And Israel never had any intention of allowing the establishment of a Palestinian state, no matter how small and powerless. Immediately after the peace process began in 1993, Israel built large city-like settlements in the West Bank, annexing the surrounding land. So the Israeli settler population in the West Bank in 1993 was 110,000. Today there are over 700,000 Israeli settlers living in the West Bank and occupied East Jerusalem. So in other words, the Palestinians got promises on the never-never while Israel continued to create what they referred to as facts on the ground. Israel defends those settlements with ruthless military force. It controls the roads and checkpoints across the West Bank. Palestinians have their freedom of movement restricted. They have to pass Israeli military checkpoints to go to work, to school, to see their family, to go to hospital. The settlements and associated infrastructure, the Israeli-only highways, the 700-kilometre concrete apartheid wall, mean that Israel controls over 60% of land in the West Bank. Israel also controls the major water sources, the aquifers in the West Bank and Gaza, completely determining how much fresh water Palestinians have access to. The military posts the settlements and outposts are so widespread that if left in place, they would guarantee a permanent Israeli military presence in any future Palestinian state. In other words, the Palestinians would be left, at best, in a situation worse than the Banistans in South Africa under apartheid, a series of small, disconnected enclaves with Israel in complete control of movement between them. And so without any undertaking from Israel that settlements would be removed, leaving the territory clear, then logistically a Palestinian state is not possible. As the Palestinian author Ghada Kami said recently, even if it was possible for all those settlements to be withdrawn, it's still no good because what is proposed is inequitable. It says that a fifth of the original Palestine should go to the Palestinian people and Israel retains 4/5. The fifth of the territory, West Bank, Gaza and East Jerusalem together, is apparently enough for 7.5 million Palestinians, while 7 million Jewish Israelis take the other 80%. It's completely unfair, it's not justice, and that's without even counting the 5 to 6 million refugees who are currently in the United Nations refugee camps, who are also part of the Palestinian people. And then there are the 2 or 3 million people like me who are driven out and also have the right to a homeland. Israel and the West have always claimed that Hamas is the barrier to peace, but it was Israel that sabotaged the peace process. Hamas has made it known for years it would accept a Palestinian state in the West Bank and Gaza and was open to negotiations with Israel. It made that explicit when it updated its charter in 2007, although it never gave up its commitment to resistance or recognised Israel's legitimacy. The Palestinian Authority established under the peace process was given limited control in the West Bank and Gaza, which was presented as a step towards a Palestinian state. But instead, what it's been in practice, Israel has demanded that the authority take on the role of policing Palestinian resistance in the West Bank on behalf of Israel and suppressing political protest and expression. And accepting that has transformed the PLO into collaborators with Israeli occupation and apartheid. So the PA President Mahmoud Abbas was elected once in 2005. In 2006, his party Fatah lost an election to Hamas, but managed to keep control in the West Bank with US and Israeli support, while Hamas took control in Gaza. The PA hasn't held an election since. Attempting to impose the Palestinian Authority in Gaza once Israel's direct military occupation and bombardment has finished, if it does, would solve nothing, even if it were possible. Palestinians have no interest in a collaborationist body that enforces apartheid. Which I think gets then to what is the solution. And because the two-state solution is increasingly seen as the sham that it is, there's a lot more interest in the one-state solution. And so to quote Ghada Kami again, she says, the only answer, the only one that seems humane, reasonable and sensible is to say, well, we have this settler colony, let's share the land, let's not have colonies anymore. The right to return, the right for all those Palestinians who've been expelled and dispossessed to return to the land of their birth and residence is vital, it's a fundamental right. Israel is a fundamentally racist society. Its very existence is premised on the ethnic cleansing and oppression of the Palestinians and its self-proclaimed status as an exclusively Jewish state. The Zionist foundations mean that maintaining a state it needs to have an overwhelmingly Jewish demographic majority. And that leads to extreme racism towards the Palestinians. I think captured by Israeli Defence Minister Yoav Gallant's proclamation that Israel is fighting human animals. It's used to justify the 75 years of occupation as well as the genocide currently unfolding before our eyes. Any solution that doesn't entail the dismantling of Israeli apartheid will not deliver justice. The only real solution in Palestine is a singular democratic state where Jews and Arabs live with equal rights and equality before the law. And secular doesn't mean that people are non-religious, it's just a separation between church and state. The criticism of that is that sometimes it's said that that's an impossible dream. But I think the heroic fight against apartheid in South Africa shows that racist systems can be dismantled. However, unlike in South Africa, where the black working class held enough economic power to break apartheid, Israel systematically excludes Palestinians from its economy and has done so even more since the First Intifada. It's completely cut Palestinians from its economy. It's also propped up by Western imperialism, principally the United States. And so Palestinians by themselves don't have the economic or military strength to defeat Israel, but their resistance does inspire struggle across the Middle East. To break apartheid in Israel will require revolutionary struggle in Arab countries surrounding Israel, particularly Egypt, to end the imperialist control of the region alongside international solidarity movements that breaks the US and Western government support for Israel. We've seen mass protests in Jordan. Recently we saw the first break in Egypt, the Iron 17 protest recently. There's mass sympathy for the Palestinians. I think anything less than a one-state solution will mean the continued slaughter of Palestinians and the continuing occupation. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made it clear that Israel will never allow a two-state solution in Palestine. He said any future arrangement, Israel needs security control of all the territory west of the Jordan River. So all those who object to the protesters chanting from the river to the sea accept Netanyahu's use of the phrase that Israel will control from the river to the sea. His open rejection of the West two-state strategy does cause problems for his Western backers. Netanyahu has also said he was deeply connected to a vision of a greater Israel. So that's not just Palestine, that means parts of Egypt, Jordan, Syria and Lebanon. And in all those places except Egypt, Israel has bombed Syria, it's bombed Lebanon, it still has troops in both. The Palestine movement has pushed Western leaders to the point of recognising Palestine. The cracks are showing, but we need to demand more, to demand sanctions, to demand an end to the two-way arms trade with Israel. Australia's just showed how easy it is to expel an ambassador. Certainly the Israeli ambassador has to go. Until Israel is recognised for what it is, a genocidal terror state with no right to exist in that form, Palestinian recognition isn't worth the paper it's written on. So to conclude, one state is the only solution that can guarantee justice and the right of return for Palestinian refugees driven from their home in 1948, in 1967, and still happening today. Thanks.